Okay, everyone, here's the schedule for today. Please follow it really closely and make sure that you guys have your study guides out right now. So if you don't have your study guide out, or if you don't have a study guide period, pause the video and make sure that everyone has that in front of them. Okay, here is the schedule. So period 6, please follow this real closely, guys. I'm going to try to make this video not too long. Number 1, should already be done maybe. Finish, staple, hand in assignments in order with a name, just like always. 2, finish study guide. Okay, so all these things that I have written in pink are notes for both you guys and Mr. Engler about where you guys can check your answers to make sure that you're getting things correctly since I'm not there. So for the study guide, if you have any questions as you go or when you finish, if you want to know if you've got everything right, Mr. Engler, the answers for the study guide are on pages 115 to 120 on the document that I shared with you on Polygons. 3, create one page of handwritten notes that can be used on the test. Can't bring in anything printed, can't bring in anything more than a page, but that could be very helpful, especially in a unit that has a lot of, formulas and properties of parallelograms and things to remember like that, okay? If you finish your notes, I would recommend practicing highly proficient proofs. I gave you guys a big proof packet. We did a few of them together. There are more difficult proofs, and in order to get an 8 on this test, you're going to have to get that portion of the test correct. And there are 2 of them, just like there are 2 of them on your study guide. So if you go to that packet that I gave you a couple weeks ago on those proofs, it's just like 3 or 4 pages of really long proofs. I'd practice those, and the answers for those, you guys could check those with Mr. Engler 81 to 85. I would definitely make sure to check those because they're harder than the ones that we did last unit. If someone happens to finish all of that, which I'm not sure anyone will, there are 2 quizzes that would also be really good for you guys to do. So before I turn you guys loose on all of this, just a reminder, no copying, work hard the whole period. Mr. Engler's really going to be looking for those 2 things today, okay? So, study guide. Looks like this. I really feel good about how you guys are going to do in here. Show work on algebra as necessary. And let's do the highly proficient proofs together so we can kind of see how those work. Okay, 41. You can see these are just a little bit longer. We are told that BCDE is a parallelogram. Okay. And we know, or we have to prove that EG is equal to CF. So, since we haven't done a ton of these, even though it's highly proficient, I am going to give you guys a little bit of direction on this. Okay, so for 41, what you're going to want to do, your plan for proof, is to prove that triangle 1 is equal to triangle 2. And then after you prove that those 2 are equal, so once we know those 2 are equal, you're going to use the CP-CTC to prove that EG equals FC. Okay, no easy task. All we know is that BCDE is a parallelogram. So let's just start out by stating that. So BCDE is a that's my abbreviation for parallelogram. And that's the given. Okay, got one step done. Now we've got to start thinking about things that we know. So in order to prove that these 2 triangles are equal, that would be this one. I'm going to mark them up here pretty good, but I want you guys to know which 2 I'm talking about. I need to be able to prove a lot of angles and a lot of sides, okay? So if I know that that thing's a parallelogram, I know that these 2, BC and DE, are parallel. And then there's a whole bunch of like alternate interior angles that we can use in there to help us along the way, okay? So let's say that we know that BC is parallel to ED. And remember, we're doing that so we can prove angles in those triangles. And we know that BC is parallel to ED by the definition of a parallelogram. Okay, let's start thinking about what angles we do know. So let's mark this thing up pretty good here. So if those two are parallel, I know that this angle has to equal this angle. We've just proved one angle of those two triangles. So that would be BCE must be equal to, what's the other one? Angle DEC. And those are alternate interior angles. And we just proved, whenever I prove something, I'm going to use the pink. We just proved an angle. Remember, to keep things structured, we write angle and side kind of off in the column. Okay, so now we need to prove more angles and sides. That's basically it. So let's start thinking about other angles we might know are equal. So I'd probably pause it if I was there. But what you want to do now is, instead of thinking of EC as the transversal, so we just used this one as our transversal, right? But that's not the only transversal. Let's look at this one as a transversal. Now, in relation to our two triangles, what angles could we know are equal? Well, if I'm looking at that green line, which I'm going to erase, we have more alternate interior angles here and there. So that would be, let's name those properly, that would be angle CFG equals angle, wait, I don't think I want to name that CFG. Let's erase this. So we're talking about this angle here. So CFG is that angle, but it's not the angle that's inside of the triangle. The angle that's inside of the triangle, I guess it'd be correct to call it CFG, but I'm going to call it angle CFH, because that's more precisely the angle that I'm talking about. And then I know that that's equal to angle EGH. And those are also alternate interior angles. And then in the column, I'm going to put an A. Okay, I've proved two angles. Now I got to prove a side somewhere. Okay, it really could be any side, because we could use the ASA or we could use the AAS. All right, so what else do we know about parallelograms that might help us prove one of these sides? Now, a common mistake is to say, oh, I know EG equals CF. We can't do that yet. That's what we're trying to prove. Okay, so what the step is that we need to do is we need to say, and maybe some of you already have it, I'd kind of be curious if I was there. I would say that EH is equal to CH. So that would be this one here and that one there. And that is because the diagonals, abbreviation, of a para bisect each other. Remember, that's one of our properties of parallelograms, and since we were told in the given that it's a parallelogram, that must be true. So now we have proved a side. And now we can say that triangle EGH is equal to triangle CFH. By the, well, let's see, which one is it? Does this look like angle, angle, side, or angle, side, angle? Well, the side doesn't fall in between the angles, so this is the angle, angle, side. Okay, now we just have to, kind of put the cherry on top by just doing the last little step of saying that EG is equal to CF by the CP P, C, T, C. And that is a big proof. I would say that the ones on the test are going to be real similar to that. Remember, there's only two. Just like there's only two on the study guide. Okay, let's take it on to 42. 42. Whew. Okay, we got to come up with a plan for this one too. So we are told in the beginning that two triangles are equal. So we know that this one, TYZ, is equal to this one, XYW. Okay, we got that down. We're good. Okay, now we need to next prove that the whole thing is a parallelogram. And remember, there are a few different ways to do that. Okay, and I think the way that we're going to use is we're going to prove that one pair of opposite sides are parallel and congruent. Okay, and that can be a little bit tricky, right? So let's go ahead and say that let's state the given. Okay, so what we're going to do basically, this is what I would tell you guys if this was the test. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a direction so you don't feel quite so aimless with these. Okay, we need to prove that this side equals this side and that they are parallel. Remember, if it has one pair of parallel congruent sides, this whole thing is a parallelogram. So really, all you have to do for this one, it's actually pretty tough. All you have to be able to do is prove those two green sides congruent and parallel, okay? So let's work towards that together. So I would start out by stating the given, of course. Triangle TYZ equals triangle XYW. And that is by the given. Okay, step one is done. That always feels good. Okay. So since those triangles are equal, well, what could we say about them? Well, what we want to do is let's think about the other given too. We're told that T is the midpoint of VZ. So I'm going to erase this, just trusting that you guys know what we're aiming for here, okay? So we know that this is the midpoint of that, okay? So we would know that these two would be equal. So this should be giving you a little bit of a direction. A couple light bulbs maybe went on. People are starting to see where this is going. Let's say that ZT is equal to WX. I'd probably pause the video here. How do we know that those two are equal? CPCTC. Triangle 1 and 2 are congruent, so their corresponding sides are congruent. Okay. Now let's go ahead and take the other part of the given. T is the midpoint of VZ. So that'd be the given. Nice. Well, what do we know because of that? We must know that VT is equal to ZT. So that would just be those two sides right there being equal. And that'd be the definition of a midpoint. Nice. Okay. This is the key step, and we've only done it a little bit. I want you to look at the information here and here. I don't know if there's candy, but this would definitely be a candy question. How can we use that information, keeping in mind what we need to prove, which is this equals this, and that they're parallel? How can we now say that VT is equal to WX. We've only used this property once or twice, and I think I kind of said it in the way, it was kind of funny. I can't remember which of you guys I used. I think it was Corin and Val. And it went like this. I said, if I can trust Corin and Corin can trust Val, then I can trust Val. Remember, that's the transitive property, which is if A is equal to B and B is equal to C, then A is equal to C. So we got that going on here, okay, with ZT being the one that's equal to the other two. So ZT is like Corin in this situation, okay? So since both of these things are equal to ZT, they're equal to each other. That's the transitive property. And now we've proved, one of the really big things that we needed to prove, which is the two sides are congruent. Now we need to work towards proving that those two things are parallel. Whew. Okay, so again, what do we know? Well, we know that these two triangles here are equal, okay, 1 and 2. So we know that 1 and 2 are equal. Since they're equal, we know that their corresponding angles are equal, right? So I know that this angle right here has to equal that angle right there. So that would be angle WXY. That's not a Z, that's an angle symbol. Angle WXY is equal to angle, what would the other one be? ZTY. And those are corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Okay, well, gee, how does knowing that those two angles are equal help us prove that those two sides are parallel? Another big question. Okay, the transitive property and this step are the two big steps. Okay, so this step and that step, those are the tough ones. So we know that, let's name those angles one more time. How did I name them? I said angle WXY is equal to Z. Okay, so that proves for us that VT is parallel to WX. And the reason for that is because those are alternate interior angles. So that is the alternate interior angles converse. Remember, the converse says if the angles are equal, the sides are parallel, and the plane theorem says if the sides are parallel, the angles are equal. So since those angles are equal, we prove the two sides are parallel. So our two key steps those are the hard steps, but here are the sides being congruent, and here are them being parallel. So we have now proved that VWXT is a para. And the reason being is one pair of opposite sides, abbreviation, are parallel and congruent. So if this was your test, I'm going to tell you this last step. I'm going to tell you, okay, you've got to prove one pair of opposite sides are parallel and congruent, and then you're going to have to fill in the rest. But I will give you guys a direction. And trust me, for this test, knowing, you can pause it here if everyone doesn't have that down, knowing how to prove different shapes congruent, knowing how to prove quadrilaterals or parallelograms is very important. So I'm going to take a picture here of something that's going to be really helpful for you guys. So basically, one other thing on the study guide, really, guys, it's a pretty easy test, except for this and then here. Remember, it says use distance and slope to justify your answers. So when you're proving parallelograms in the coordinate plane, there are 3 different ways to do that, and I think that this is on one of your, guys' packets. But this is something that you would want to include in your notes. Like if you're doing number 3 today, creating a page of notes, I would make sure that you have this written down. Okay, so this is ways to prove parallelograms in the coordinate plane. then I think it's also beneficial, there's one other one on here, is basically just knowing the properties of parallelograms. And that would be this one. So you guys might leave this up on the screen, kind of toggle back and forth between the two of them. So I'll blow them up really big here for you. And as you guys are going along, check your answers with Mr. Engler. A lot going on today, guys. Make it a productive day. And then also, you know, make sure that you have these in your notes because they'll be super helpful as you go through the test. So these are all things that you guys can use to make it a good period. Here's the schedule. Here's something for notes. Here's something for notes. Sorry for the long video, but we do have a test coming up, and I want you guys to do well on it. And it is a long one. Remember, it's the same as the study guide. Same amount of questions, same kind of questions. So you're going to have tomorrow, Wednesday, the short period to do it, and Thursday. Okay, so you'll have 2 full days so everyone has time to finish. Let's use that period wisely today and get a good sub-report from Mr. Engler.